I want to put you all in a situation. Some of you might have experienced it before, some of you may not have, but just imagine for a second you're back in high school and you're being picked on. You're being bullied. It starts off with just a few taunts every other week, and it starts escalating. Every day, kids start calling you sissy, little bitch, faggot, slut. Quickly, it starts escalating to violence, and kids start throwing their books at you, pushing you up against lockers, and throwing food at you during lunch. You decide, after this going on, to go to your parents and talk to them about it. You decide that they need to be involved. They tell you, go to your teacher, go to the administration, talk to them. So you do. You go to your high school teacher, and they say to you, just go to the administration. They'll talk to you about it. And the administration says to you, kids will be kids. They say, it's a tough part of life, but you'll be tougher for this after. Weeks turn into months, and you decide to just let it go. And slowly you start internalizing it. You look at yourself in the mirror and you think, faggot. You look at yourself in the mirror and you think, you little sissy. And you look at yourself and you think all the things that these kids have been saying about you. Eventually you decide to give up. You think, if it's so bad now, if it's so rough right now, why go on? And you decide to take your own life. This is a story that was far too often told in 2010. And as you might imagine, is a true story. But it's not of a high school student. It's of 13-year-old Asher Brown. He was heckled for his size, for his religious beliefs, for the way he acted and the way his voice sounded, and decided to kill himself. This happened more often in 2010 than any other year. Tyler Clemente killed himself after his roommate hid a camera in his room, and Tyler and his partner went into his room, had sex, and his roommate decided to post that video on Facebook. A week later, Tyler Clemente killed himself. Montana Lance was heckled just because he had a lisp, and decided at the age of 9 he was going to be done. Kids like Cecilia Okwume, who was 11, and she was heckled for her size. She was called Blackie, ugly, fatty, and decided to take her own life. Kids like Samantha Kelly, who at 14 was raped, and she was brave enough to come forward and report her rapist. But she was heckled so much after that she decided to take her own life again. And kids like Caleb Nolt, who was just criticized for the way he dressed, but figured he'd rather kill himself than try to change. Then you had me. In 2010, shortly after I was elected student body president, I was starting to get attacked by the assistant attorney general, just like these kids were being attacked in that same year. But the difference was that the person who was my bully, my aggressor, was someone who was meant to uphold the laws of our state. And the thing that's interesting is that the language that he used was similar to the language that we saw and heard kids like Caleb Nolt hearing. It was the same language that these kids were experiencing. And so I want to talk a little bit about the language that he used and the tactics that he used. And it started with Chris Armstrong Watch. This was a site committed to keeping tabs on me, the president of the student body, and my radical, homosexual, activist, racist, elitist, liar agenda. Now, it's funny because it's interesting and it seems strange, but he started posting about me, putting Nazi swastikas online. He started comparing me to Harvey Milk, who is the openly gay San Francisco first openly gay San Francisco city councilman who was killed by a fellow city councilman. He started comparing me to him, calling me a racist, elitist liar, a closet racist, posting these pictures that seem pretty aggressive online. I even had an internship that year, and he started calling the Speaker of the House's office, where I was interning, asking, will the Speaker, one of the most powerful, prominent Democratic strategists in the nation, continue to allow the grand dragon of MSA to serve as one of his interns? I was just an intern. She didn't know who I was. I'm glad that got a laugh because it wasn't supposed to be a joke. So, to a certain extent, I know that I put myself out there. I know that I was going to deal with a certain amount of derision and a certain amount of criticism because I put myself out and ran for student body president. But it got hard when it started to affect my friends. When he started saying that parties I had hosted in 2009 were gay orgies, and he started saying that kids who were my friends, who were part of that party, were participants in this gay orgy. I didn't even live in the dorms at the time, and calling them fanatical gay activists. He started attacking people who were close to me, saying that I was in an ongoing sexual relationship with my vice president, and that it was a clandestine, he was my secret boyfriend. This image was posted online, alleging that someone else was gay. And then he starts talking about other kids who were on the student assembly, saying that we are anti-Christian bigots who have no respect for human life. And then even further, he starts attacking my family, posting about me and my father, calling us dumb and dumber, saying that the process to figure out legal options was a process of futility and that we were fools for trying. He called me a little sissy who reports to his wealthy daddy. He even started attacking my grandparents, saying that they were extremely wealthy from Newport, Rhode Island. They live in South Carolina. And saying that we come from old money, and that Steve Armstrong is a very highly paid Park Avenue attorney. None of these things were true. But eventually, Andrew Chevelle decided to go on national television to defend them.
I want to go over some of the stuff that you have on your blog. There's a picture of Chris Armstrong with a Nazi swastika near his face. There's another with the words racist, elitist, liar scrawled on his face. You accused him at one point of being Satan's representative on the student assembly. I got to ask you, I mean, you're a state official. This is a college student. What are you doing?
Well, Anderson, basically, if you've been involved in political campaigns before, you know all sorts of stuff happens, and this is just another tactic bringing awareness to what Chris really stands for.
Do you really think, for an assistant attorney general, targeting some college student because he's gay is appropriate?
Well, again, I am doing this as a private citizen, off work time, as a University of Michigan alum. We're quibbling over tactics. We're not quibbling over substance. The substance of the matter is, Anderson, Chris Armstrong is a radical homosexual activist who got elected partly funded by the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund to promote a very deeply radical agenda at the University of Michigan. And his biggest issue is gender-neutral housing. What we're talking about is anybody, any man or woman wanting to choose to live together. That's a radical redefinition of gender norms.
You say this is all just a political campaign, though. A, you're not running for any political campaign, nor is he. He's already the student council president. He's not some national figure, and you're putting swastikas on his face and saying he's Satan's representative. That seems like below-the-belt campaigning. I don't know what campaigns you're used to being involved with, but don't you think that is beyond the pale?
Well, no, I don't think it's beyond the pale. Like I said, I think you're...
You stand by that he's Satan's representative on the student council. You stand by that?
Well, excuse me, Anderson, that isn't on the blog. That's taken from another posting somewhere on the internet. I may have put out...
so you don't stand by it?
That's my opinion.
I'm just asking if you stand by. Okay, you stand by it. I was reading the criteria the state of Michigan uses to identify someone who's a cyberbully. And they say a cyberbully is someone who uses technology to harass, embarrass, intimidate, or stalk someone else, and it lists the types of content a cyberbully may send, including vulgar and argumentative messages, cruel, offensive, and insulting remarks. Under that definition, aren't you a cyberbully?
No, absolutely not, and that's a total mischaracterization from the local news reporter, Ross Jones, that did the piece on me, who was very biased.
I don't know
You
who
can
that
read
is.
about that on the blog.
I don't know who that is.
I protest with a sign. That's exercising my First Amendment rights, Anderson. That's not following anybody around. I don't live anywhere near to Ann Arbor. I've been down there maybe 3 or 4 times since I started the blog.
Have you ever been to his house and hung outside his house and videotaped?
Right. So I have no problem with the fact that Chris is homosexual. I have a problem with the fact that he is advancing a very radical agenda.
I bring up it certainly makes you appear intolerant at the very least. Seems like you hate this guy because he's gay.
Well, Anderson, that's your spin on it. The real bigot here is Chris Armstrong. I don't have any hate in my body at all. I recognize that Chris is a child of God. However, just because he's homosexual doesn't mean he gets a free pass and we can't criticize him. That does not make you a bigot to criticize somebody or somebody's agenda. He's a political figure, Anderson.
So when he went on Anderson Cooper, it stopped being about just me and him. When kids like Caleb Nolt and kids like Asher Brown and kids like Tyler Clemente see somebody like that on television, I know we laugh because he's a little strange, but they see a bully. And he becomes the manifestation of the things that are being said to them every single day in schools. And so when he went on Anderson Cooper, it became more about the fact that these kids were hearing someone say those things and validate the things that they're being told in their schools than it is about just me and him. And at a certain point, I started thinking about, what does it say about our society when we have, and he talks about quibbling with tactics, when we have someone like him waging these kinds of campaigns. And I thought to myself, this is, just like he said, it's similar to a lot of other things we see in the country. And when I started thinking about how do we attack bullying? What do we say to kids? We say a lot of the time, it gets better. Put up with it now and you'll have a better life later on. But then I think about instances where in our national politics, that's not even the case. When we have women like Ann Coulter, who goes on national television and calls John Edwards, who was at one point a vice presidential candidate to lead our nation, a faggot. When we have Rush Limbaugh, who has millions of followers, regardless of whether you agree with him, people listen to him, and then he calls Sandra Fluke, a Georgetown student, a slut. That language has real impacts. And I started thinking about, when I went on Anderson Cooper, I felt like I couldn't say to these kids, it gets better. I wish I could be up here today, and I wish in 2010 I could have gone on Anderson Cooper and say that there's a solution, that I have a plan to attack bullying in our schools, bullying in our administration, bullying in our communities, so that kids like Asher Brown have a community that and a support network that wouldn't have let him kill himself. But I don't. And I even know how it feels to feel that vulnerable, to feel like you want to end it all. And I even have friends and family in this audience who saw those moments of weakness, those moments in 2010 when I, in spite of everything, wanted to just give up and thought, if this is going to be the way my life is going to be, I don't want to live it. But I survived. Because of all of you, because of the university, because of the friends and family that I had. And because I survived, the one thing I do have to impart is to how to survive a bully. And the first step is to not respond. I didn't talk I didn't go on Anderson Cooper to talk about Andrew Chevelle. I went on Anderson Cooper to talk about kids like Asher Brown. And this is the hardest thing to tell a kid who's being pushed up against a locker, being thrown epithets every single day, to not respond. But I remember when I was being bullied that I went back to when I was a kid, my sister said to me, and I was being bullied, and she said to me, "Don't respond, that's what they want." Bullies want a reaction. They want a platform like Anderson Cooper 360. They want to be able to go up there and say these things about somebody else. The second thing is seek out your resources. There are resources like trevorproject.org and other resources that help students if they're feeling like they're being suicidal. And third, find your ally. I had friends who I could lean on during my times of distress. And you need to have someone who can fight your fights for you so that finally you can act swiftly and not afraid to be bold. I was lucky enough to win a settlement against Mr. Chevelle because I could sue him. But kids can't just sue their bullies. So what can we do for kids? What can we do for these kids? And again, the reason I survived, the reason I won, was because I had a huge support network. I had Michigan. I had friends and family who cared about me and loved me no matter who I was. I had friends who were able to fight battles for me, lawyers who were able to help me out. And I thought to myself, we are incredibly privileged to be at a university that knows to stand up when someone like that is attacking another one of our students. But not all kids get to be at the University of Michigan. And because of that, I started thinking, and I realized my job and our job as we leave here today and as we leave this university is to take the things we've learned from today at TEDx and to take the things we learned from at this university and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to be someone's resource, to be their ally when they're in pain, and to be someone, and to help someone act swiftly, and to help people be bold, and to help kids like Asher Brown, who never had a chance to untap his potential, tap theirs. As we leave here today, it's our responsibility to take the things that we've learned and take the community that we've been privileged to and bring it into the world so that Asher Brown in another world could have a place. Thank you.